It isn't too uncommon for fans of one particular nerdy interest to also be wrapped up in another. Ask any self-proclaimed geek if they read comic books, and they'll also tell you about the novels that they've been reading, the misadventures of their Dungeons & Dragons campaign, films or television shows that they're stuck in. But what makes an almost flat circle on the Venn diagram of nerddom is comic books and video games. And I mean, sure, there's plenty of people who play video games that don't read comic books. A quick glance at any of the top-selling games of all time, and it's filled with family-friendly Nintendo games, or whatever first-person shooter is the zeitgeist at that moment. But for comic book fans, they can more than likely tell you all about that time that they were addicted to World of Warcraft, or if they still are. Which is why it's so odd when game developers try to adapt a beloved comic book character, they can sometimes be the worst games of all time, like Superman 64, which just gives you the fun and exciting gameplay of simply flying through rings to save the day. Yay. Or Aquaman on the GameCube, which took that hot mess of Superman 64 and put it underwater. And it's not just a DC thing, there's a whole swarm of MCU movie tie-in games that were just a hot mess. And I'm not saying it's impossible for superhero games to be good. Far from it. Games like the X-Men in the arcade, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, the Batman Arkham series, and Sony Spider-Man, just to name a few. Games that understood the characters that they were adapting, and the team behind them that knew how to best bring that experience to the fans. But looking at what makes these games work, and why others don't, tells us exactly why it's just so difficult to get the superhero games right. And with the recent release of Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, the upcoming releases of Marvel's Wolverine and Blade, and that one Flash fan-made demo that people keep thinking is a real thing, but it's probably not, let's get into it. So the most glaring hurdle is that the development process has to be different for each hero. Back in the day, when you played a superhero game at the arcade, there really wasn't too much to differentiate the character that you were playing as a distinct hero. Iron Man's repulsor blasts and Hawkeye's arrows hit all the same. As technology advanced and individual characters could be more developed, there were always those heroes that would be better suited to what the console could allow. I'm not a game dev or anything, but even I can tell that the closer the hero could fit into the real world, the easier it probably would be to replicate. It doesn't seem like it'd be too difficult to adapt something like the Punisher on the OG Xbox when you could just take the source code from a shooter game from around the time and just give it a quick retheme. Or the surprisingly slept-on Wolverine Origins tie-in game that was insurmountably better than the film. It's basically just a hack and slash that explains why your character always heals, with it being Wolverine's healing factor. And let's be honest, that's the only real difference between it and God of War, except now you don't have to find healing orbs and treasure chests. The problem still exists when you start adapting heroes with more and more spectacular powers. The technical limitations get more and more taxing on the PC or console. Take that Flash demo for instance. It's really cool, really impressive, and I would love to play it, if such a game could even exist without frying my graphics card. Even using Unreal Engine 5, if you watch the footage in slow motion, it's only rendering small chunks of the game at any given time. One streak here, mini loading screen there, and you're just running in a straight line. The big fight scene even becomes less interesting when you go frame by frame. I'm not trying to pick on a fan creation, I'm just trying to point out the limitations. Imagine trying to simulate someone running really fast. Now toss in flying, in-depth combat mechanic, and an even more expansive open world that lets you actually enjoy those powers. And any actual Superman game is going to be a long way away. And another great example could be how in Sony's Spider-Man, everything in the background looked fine as you whipped across Manhattan, but then everything needed to be made with a little less polygons as Brooklyn and Queens were added in the sequel. It's much more data to process, and it's too much to render to give the players a fully traversable New York without loading screens. It's either a seamless transition at high speeds, or less blocky trash you wouldn't notice if it wasn't pointed out to you. The technology will advance to the point that it can handle more stress on the system. Think of how the way it used to beat Pac-Man back in the day was to get such a high score with that all the additional numbers would crash the arcade's booth's CPU. But now I can run the 16-bit stylized Vampire Survivors on my top-of-the-line gaming computer, and it runs smooth as butter while I mow down literally thousands of enemies on the screen. There will be a certain point where the improvement of graphics is going to plateau, and the advancements that we're going to see are going to be in how the system can process and render everything. The answer is that this is just going to take time, and we're not there yet. Another hurdle is the bane of every multiplayer game: balancing the characters. Every hero is somebody's favorite character, and you want to give that person something, but you have to stay true to who those characters are. And it makes sense if you think about it. If you truly had Superman as strong as he is depicted, then there'd never be a reason to pick Batman. And nowhere is this more mind-boggling than with superhero fighting games. You really can't just have one character mop the floor with the others. Marvel vs. Capcom needed to keep everything level. You can't realistically say if between Captain America or Ryu who was the strongest. And that's actually standard fare for the comic book genre. Every fight between heroes in Marvel and DC is usually going to end up with a draw because the bigger threat is actually the bad guys. But the cracks really start to show when everyone is equally as powerful, which means Robin can go one-on-one in a fist fight against Darkseid in Injustice 2. From a player perspective, it actually is kind of enjoyable when things aren't balanced. Just embrace the fact that the comic books aren't balanced either. Give the players a reward for their efforts. Kind of like how a lot of superhero games gave unlockable costumes as you did challenges, which is always how the bombastic Bagman Spider-Man always gets remembered instead of that one issue of the comics where Spidey needed to borrow new clothes and got it from the Fantastic Four. But I guess costumes now are just DLC. Ugh. Or even when there was a challenge to get that reward, it actually feels, well, rewarding. And games like Marvel Ultimate Alliance, where the characters you start out with are relatively fun and you unlock more as you progress throughout the game. But if you really want the Silver Surfer, an overpowered character that cheeses through every battle, you need to beat every comic book mission, which isn't even possible until you're already almost done with the game. But man, is it worth it? The same goes with the Hulk in Midnight Suns, but I would argue that they did a much better job balancing him. Most characters in the game can be useful because they're geared to a specific role to fill: a ranged attack, melee attack, tank, or support. You can only take 3 heroes with you, and the challenge is actually trying to find the ultimate team composition. Most characters can fill one role very easily, and another kinda well. But you need to earn the Hulk through story progression, which wasn't until almost the end of the game, and then you finally get the best tank melee fighter in the game. But of course, there's also a downside of keeping things unbalanced in a single-player game. It needs to feel organic, like Marvel's Avengers. Out of all the characters, Black Widow was the most insanely overpowered character, to the point that there wasn't really any use to play any other character. Even the characters you got in the paid DLC were useless when she could just insta-kill anyone. And the other overpowered character was Hawkeye of all people. It just doesn't feel right, you know? We spent decades reading comics and stories of how Hulk and Thor were supposed to be these unstoppable forces, but the 2 strongest characters in the game were the regular non-powered humans of the team. Which leads me to the biggest hurdle: the story. Behind every artistic medium is the story that's being conveyed to the audience. Yet, video games are the only true art form that lets us be the character. I could read all about Middle-earth or watch the adventures of the Fellowship, but it's only in video games where I actually am living out Tolkien's fantasy. You're not just reading or watching the stories of Star-Lord. In the Guardians of the Galaxy game, you are Star-Lord, and any problem in the game can be explained away if the writing is good enough. A quick line of dialogue that explains why everyone can fight Superman in Injustice was because of a super pill, or that bridges to the other boroughs in Spider-Man PS4 were just closed. So hey, those other 2 problems can be easily solved with writing. Spider-Man worked because we truly felt like we were Peter trying to overcome the Sinister Six forming. The Arkham series worked because we truly felt like we were Batman and got to be the world's greatest detective, and that pushed along the plot. That's at the heart of what separates good superhero games from the bad. Is the story good? And at the end of the day, that's a surprisingly difficult task when the story is the last thing on the publisher's minds, because they're too worried about if they can rake in $1 billion. Although, now that I'm realizing it, by my own guidelines that I just laid out, if you put more of an emphasis on the gameplay over the graphics, embrace the fun of being overpowered, and above all, just tell a good story, I think I unintentionally described the Lego Batman and Avengers games as being the perfect superhero games. And I mean, yeah, they kind of are, I guess. But what do you guys think? What were some of your favorite superhero video games? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this week's video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more weekly content on comic books and nerd stuff. I've been Eric, and before I go, I'd like to extend my deepest thanks to everyone that got me to 1,000 subscribers. You really have been awesome.